So you want a flagship phone, but you don't want to spend absolute top dollar to get one? Well, I'm pretty sure you're not alone there, especially given the recent rise of phones costing well over £1,000. Now, two companies that offer that exact thing are OnePlus and Xiaomi. With the OnePlus 10 Pro and the Xiaomi 12 Pro, we have two high-end phones, and both available for less than the top models from the likes of Samsung and Apple. So, which should you buy? I'm Cam Bunton from Pocket-lint, and in this video I'll hopefully help you to decide. And while you're here, if you do like it, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more. There's something of a boilerplate approach to phone design, at least there appears to be when it comes to Chinese smartphone manufacturers and flagship devices, because to look at from the front without looking closely, you'd be hard pushed to see a lot of difference. Both are very similar size in pretty much every dimension, and there's only a couple of grams difference in weight too. When it comes to how they feel to hold, there's not a lot in it then, because they do both have that curved glass on the back and the front with a similar soft frosted finish on it. There's nothing in this really. We suspect that were you to choose one based on looks, there are other small details that will do it for you. For instance, the camera housing design. Xiaomi's protrudes quite far, but the lenses are neatly contained and arranged in a lovely minimal camera unit. Still, there's definitely appeal to OnePlus's bolder, larger, shiny approach. It looks great contrasted with the soft green in particular. Then there are other things like Xiaomi's having a matte, softer anodized aluminium around the edges, versus the shiny, glossy approach from the OnePlus. Plus, there's some really nice attention to detail. I like the design of the speaker grills, for instance. The whole thing is just an exercise in understated design, and I really appreciate that. OnePlus does have an alert slider switch, and that's a nice practical touch for switching between silent, ring, and vibrate modes. Now, moving on to speak about displays, and even here you'll see some similarities. For instance, both are near enough 6.7 inches. Technically Xiaomi's is 6.73, but both have Quad HD Plus resolution, although OnePlus has 16 more rows of pixels because it's 1440 by 3216 versus 1440 by 3200. They even feature other similar features like how both reach up to 120Hz refresh rates and have adaptive technology to ramp it up and down depending on the content you're viewing, and both are 1 billion color screens. Xiaomi's is a little brighter, and that's something you might notice if you had them side by side and cranked up 100%. But we're talking 1300 nits versus 1500 nits here. And when you get to those sort of levels, it's not something that's going to make a huge difference to the experience overall. Both are generally fantastic screens, and Xiaomi's in particular is a very, very good panel and shows great color, and sharpness and dynamic range, even when the brightness isn't all the way up. In their default natural or original modes, they both look similar. However, Xiaomi's does have a slightly warmer feel to it generally, making anything red or orange look a bit too saturated. OnePlus has a cleaner look, however you can tweak them, and both have the ability to switch on an ambient mode, which matches the white balance to the light around you. Both offer the ability to customize the way the screen looks as well. Dive into the display advanced settings and you can choose from a number of different presets, including advanced color gamuts. Xiaomi's in particular gives you a lot of freedom here to adjust all manner of things, even contrast, saturation and gamma. So even if you don't like the defaults, there's plenty here that you can tweak with to change it and make it look the way that you want. What we think makes the biggest difference is the software. While neither are close to stock Android, if that even exists anymore, Xiaomi's approach to software is very heavy compared to OnePlus's. There's so much going on, including the confusing reworking of the notification shade to act more like an iPhone with a control center and notifications swipe down from different sides. Thankfully though, you can bring the old way back, but it's not the default. What I like about OnePlus's latest software is twofold. It's free of bloat for starters and uses Google's apps where it can, and doesn't add lots of extra nonsense. It's also very easy to customize the appearance. From changing app icon shapes and size to accent color to the always-on display, it's all in one easy-to-find personalization screen. Xiaomi's is a very different method, to the point of being confusing at times. Sure, you can get used to it eventually, but it feels like a lot needs to be done to it to simplify and streamline it. There are just things that get in the way, like the scanning of apps when you install them from the Play Store, and yes, that can be switched off, but it's just another layer for no real reason. I will say this though, I really like the super wallpaper in Xiaomi's MIUI software, or MIUI. It's super cool, having the always-on display, lock screen and home screen wallpapers transition seamlessly into each other, while changing the view. More Android makers should do this. Now moving on to performance and battery, and finally we start to see the biggest differences between these two phones. So they both feature the same Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor, coupled with at least 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. Of course, there are higher configurations, up to 12GB of RAM. OnePlus even has a 512GB storage model, where Xiaomi tops out at 256. When it comes to playing the most demanding games, they both understandably do it really well. They're fast, responsive and smooth, thanks to the flagship processor, effective cooling and 120Hz refresh displays. So the speed isn't something I'd base a decision on. Where they differ is in battery life and charging speeds. OnePlus has a 5000 mAh battery, and while it's not the best phone we've tested for efficiency, it's still good. It's also improved considerably with software updates since we did our review. We can comfortably get to the end of a full day with pretty heavy usage, and haven't seen the dreaded red zone once. With Xiaomi's 4600 mAh battery, things aren't quite as rosy. With heavy gaming and camera use during the day, we often got into that red zone. It just doesn't seem to optimize the performance all that well by default. Having a brighter display and lower capacity battery than the OnePlus doesn't help. With my own typical usage, which is quite light, and the fact I live in a 4G area, really most days I can get to bedtime without an issue with both phones. But with similar usage, I'd sometimes see 10 to 15% difference between them, maybe even 20% difference in levels by the end of the day. For heavy users, particularly in 5G areas, that could be a big difference. But here's the thing, Xiaomi's included 120-watt fast charger is really quick. In fact, you can fully refill the phone from empty in about 18 minutes. So even if the battery isn't quite as good as you'd like, you can literally plug it in for 10 to 15 minutes and be back to nearly full levels. Now OnePlus is fast as well, but not quite as fast. Its 80-watt charger in all markets except the US can fully recharge in about 32 minutes. Now let's switch gears and look at cameras. There's a similar makeup here in a way. They both have main, ultra-wide and telephoto zoom lenses. The difference being OnePlus has a 3.3 times optical zoom, where Xiaomi has 2 times. That in itself can make quite a big difference, offering you the ability to get that bit closer into your subject without having to rely on digital zoom and losing sharpness. Xiaomi's kept things pretty easy on the megapixel front, offering 50 megapixel sensors on all 3 cameras. OnePlus has 48 megapixel on the main, 8 megapixel on the zoom and 50 on the ultra-wide. Not that this has much to do with how the two differ. What surprised us was the difference in how they dealt with colour and contrast. With Hasselblad's colour solution, OnePlus goes a bit more muted and natural looking, where Xiaomi goes more for that eye-catching, colour-popping look with lots of contrast. For some things, that OnePlus approach is preferable, especially when shooting anything green like plants or landscapes. Xiaomi's really does push that green way too far, making it really oversaturated. OnePlus generally delivers a more true-to-life look to the images, where Xiaomi borders on the hyper-real. At nighttime, things are a bit different. First of all, Xiaomi has this super moon mode, which makes it really easy to capture a good picture of the moon without it being out of focus or blurry or overexposed. OnePlus struggles here and needs to be switched to manual mode. In general, night mode shots, Xiaomi seems to deliver better, sharper images too, from the main camera and ultra-wide at least. In the end, personally, I found I preferred the OnePlus 10 Pro experience. I like the cleaner approach to software, the daytime results from the camera, plus the battery life seems to be better managed. That's not to say the Xiaomi is a bad phone, not at all. It delivers top tier levels of performance, has a fantastic display and great nighttime camera capabilities. So let me know what you think of these two phones in the comments down below. You can grab me on Twitter if you want to, I'm at Cam Bunton. If you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe and tap the notification bell to make sure you don't miss any more. And I'll see you again in the next one. Bye for now.